There's no time. Skip it.
Fast forward.
Come on, hurry up.
Ah, skip it. Hello, welcome. Good Game Show for gamers by gamers. Barjo.
Hex, no time for mucking around this week, Barjo. We've got 3 huge games, too much to talk about. We've got Assassin's Creed 3.
Medal of Honor Warfighter.
Halo 4.
And Goose Goes Backwards compatible with the Bond franchise or something.
Guess the game.
News time, Hex. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go.
Good game.
Okay, news. Disney has bought Lucasfilm in a confirmed deal that will not affect development on the upcoming Star Wars 1313. Minecraft has become the most played game on Xbox Live, overtaking Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, FIFA 13 and Borderlands 2. A damning report on 2 human developer Silicon Knights has claimed that due to mismanagement, less than 5 people remain at the studio. A Facebook version of Tom Clancy's
Hex, we're gonna go. News, that's enough news. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Good game.
Before we get started, Hex, let me just pull out the old FPS campaign guide to single-player mediocrity in a modern setting manual. Bit dusty. Okay. Political terrorism story.
Yeah, it does have that.
Chopper turret section.
Is there a stealth section in there?
Yes,
Yeah,
there is.
there
Yeah,
was,
that's
wasn't
a
there?
subset,
A nighttime enemy bunker at night with night vision infiltration.
Yep. What else? AI buddies that can't hit anything. Yes.
Dubai Sandstorm. That's a new one, but I think it's going to be setting a trend.
Oh, and yes, of course, slow motion breaches. Lots and lots of slow motion breaches.
It's a breachathon. I think then, Barjo, it definitely satisfies the criteria for a powerfully average game. It doesn't do anything you'll remember an hour later, and it's also rather short.
Oh, that's in here too.
Oh.
Short campaign. Medal of Honor prides itself on telling the soldier's story, and they've gone so big here that sadly that gets lost a little bit. For all its criticism, Hex, I quite enjoyed the last Medal of Honor campaign. It was a tight little story about a band of brothers fighting their way out of a tough situation. Warfighter is a bit better in a technical and visual way, but it doesn't nail the storytelling, despite trying very hard to make the burdens of war on those who get left behind hit home.
Part of the problem is the storyline is a bit confusing. 1 minute you're in a cutscene of a mother and child, which pushes those emotional buttons, and there is respect shown to those family issues. And then the next minute you're killing faceless enemies and not really knowing why, and the real world locations don't add a whole lot to it either.
And also, I found all of the character models to have slightly larger than normal heads, and even in the cutscenes, especially that young girl, it's just a little bit creepy. That's what nightmares are made from.
Really though, I think we're just struggling coming into something like this after Spec Ops really shook things up earlier this year.
Yeah, and not every game can be Spec Ops and deal with that intense subject matter. You know, we can still have our big blockbuster COD games, but I think we can all agree that we want something a little bit more than a polished shooting gallery, and that's all this really is.
There's a good variety of locations, and you'll slowly stop and pop your way through enemies with some nice effects and big moments here and there. I especially like those visual effects when you get shot, and those flashes are particularly stressful.
Yeah, I like those too, but still, this is more nothing that we haven't seen before than we have ever seen before. Enemy AI doesn't do much other than hide, reload, and then stick their head out and shoot. The odd grenade is thrown to displace you, and they take bullets well, but they're just not interesting to engage, and you don't believe for a second that they're sentient. You also feel like you're the only one that matters, and while that can be a good thing, here it just feels unfair because enemies are quite good at shooting you, and the moment you step out into the open, they all just zone in on you.
There aren't any wave of goons moments, which is good, but you do get the sense that when you've killed a certain number, the next group just file in, so it does feel a bit scripted at times. There is solid pacing to the action, and now and then you'll do something a bit different, like drive a boat or chase an enemy down. There's also a couple of car chase sections, and these handle very well, almost like they've come from a Criterion game.
Overall, it's not a terrible campaign, it's just not particularly innovative or interesting.
But let's move on to the multiplayer, and I think the main question for most will be, is this worth the purchase for multiplayer alone? I mean, being on the same engine as Battlefield 3, can we expect the same thrills?
Yeah, well, there are some things that have carried over, such as the guns. They all feel quite good and they sound good. Visually, it holds up okay, but I found the environment to be strewn with lots of debris and stuff you get just stuck on, so that's very frustrating and it doesn't feel very fluid.
Everything's bumping into my shin and stopping me from moving at all.
One of the things we liked the most was the variety of nations you could choose from to represent, and they all have different stats, but we went Australian naturally.
Good on you, mate.
One thing I also liked very much was the buddy system, which is essentially a two-man squad, but it makes you focus on teamwork with one other player, and I thought that was a cool idea.
Sorry.
But there is just so much choice when it comes to modern shooters out there, and I just could not find a reason to keep playing this, so I'm giving it 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try and compete with the powerhouse that is Call of Duty or Battlefield, you really need to be nearly as good or at least significantly different. So I'm giving it 5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Do we have time for Tiny Power?
Oh, I don't know, it's pretty short.
It's a shit game, and it's going to ruin us.
Spring rolls! Oh, someone had to say it. This game is gonna suck.
No, it won't.
It will, Norm, and it's going to ruin us.
No, it won't.
Norm. Shut up.
Hey, Megan's on a real affair.
What?
A disturbing new video game is about to hit the shelves where you roleplay as a violent psychopath. I spoke earlier to Megan Mason, the game's creator. How can you possibly think that killing young children is entertainment?
What?
Surely you will admit that violent video games will harm the minds of all those beautiful innocent children out there.
No, this game is about a bond between a mother
What
and...
about the mothers of the children you've been putting at risk?
I'm sorry. I thought some publicity might help you guys get excited. I didn't know he would...
This is the last straw, Megan. You're fired.
What?
Check it out.
Sorcery.
Good game.
It's no secret that I'm a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I mean, this is a series that's carved a niche in action-adventure gaming.
Assassin's Creed 3 continues the story of Desmond and his team, who are still hiding from the modern-day Templar organization Abstergo. Hex, I've always loved the idea of the modern-day sci-fi stuff, but in the end it's always been a bit naff, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of that chapter of the book that you really want to skip through. The real game begins in 1753, where you take the role of Haytham Kenway, a very British and well-to-do officer and assassin who's chasing down the secrets of the Templars. I love Haytham. He's kind of like a fancy pirate Sherlock, hunting for clues and getting involved in swashbuckling duels on the stormy seas. And that British turn of phrase is just so good.
My apologies.
I have to say though, for a posh British dude, he's sure got swagger.
There's your knife back.
But this isn't the game's main protagonist. Setting up an entirely new character in a new setting takes time, and it is a slow burn, but it's so worth it.
Oh, it takes so long to get going. Haytham's stuff is short but exciting, and it does provide the necessary foundation for the rise of a new hero. A half-English, half-Mohican lad with a Native American name no one can actually pronounce, so he takes on the English name of Connor.
The Assassin-Templar War has its roots firmly entangled in the colonial unrest, with Connor's only choice being to join the Brotherhood and follow in the footsteps of his ancestors before him.
You begin Connor's life as a child and then a teenager, and this sets the stage for all that assassin-y bitterness and angst that fuels the vengeance we love them for. But also as a way to get used to some of the new features the game introduces. Being Mohican, Connor has a unique set of skills even before he begins his assassin's training, and they're a joy to make use of. Hunting is a major feature in the game, and you're armed with an array of tools like snares, a bow and arrow, and getting lost in the wild is something you'll do often when you're fixing for a bear fight.
Your homestead is nestled high in the hills, and you'll soon get the lay of the land because the land is just so wonderful to explore. We all know assassins are famous for their rooftop free running, but growing up in the forest means that Connor can soar through the treetops with even more ease. Just when I thought that free running couldn't get any more fun, Barjo.
Yeah, I was worried about the tree climbing stuff, but they've nailed it, haven't they? Trees are artfully placed in the landscape to make leaping from branch to tree fork simple and intuitive. Often he'll naturally head in a direction or swing from a branch, while all you have to do is hold the trigger and keep him on course.
I know I'm being a bit romantic, but they've really thought about this character and where he comes from and how he would interact with his environment, and it makes for such good gaming.
Yes, but while Connor may be king of the hill, it's the city where he gets in the most trouble. This is where the action is, and where things get a lot trickier.
May I ask why you seek him, Connor?
He intends to purchase the land upon which my village stands.
As you team up with allies to help you take down the Templars and ultimately save your home, you'll take on tailing and eavesdropping missions, sabotage, assassinations, with similar optional objectives that were introduced in Brotherhood to achieve full synchronization at mission completion.
Prepare yourselves.
I was actually really pleased to see that they've made all this quite a bit harder. I mean, gone are the days where gawking, obvious hiding spots are everywhere for you to seek refuge in. Guards are relentless in their pursuit. Put a toe out of line and your notoriety goes through the roof, so guards will attack on sight, making it impossible to get around the city, unless you do some crafty bribing. And this raises the stakes in nearly every mission. You know, in previous games I had all these gadgets, but I so rarely used them. But here your tripwires, poison darts and smoke bombs are all tantamount to success. And using them cleverly to pick off guards chilling out on the fringes of a camp just make you feel so damn smug.
And it's always still so stressful when that attention marker goes yellow and you know they've spotted you.
Yeah, and you still can take cover when that happens, but they will search the area, so you have to be careful.
He's off!
Once that marker goes to red though, there's no hiding from anyone. You either need to get far, far away or someone's gotta go. And usually achieving full synchronization involves not killing anyone or not taking any damage, but honestly they've made the combat system so fluid that I rarely wanted to take the passive way out.
Yeah, the fighting's really solid, isn't it? Slick swordplay with Hatham, his fighting style is elegant yet deadly, but Connor has good counters and finishes with his tomahawk. Fights vary depending on your opponents, and just when you get into a good place with timing those counters, you'll encounter tougher foes that seem to counter your counters at every turn. It's then that you can make clever use of your other weapons to give yourself an advantage. I had a great time with the rope dart. What a spectacular weapon.
Oh no, not much care neither. Beats scope.
Yes, they've had 4 games to perfect that fighting system, so it really does feel like it's now at a point where it's well and truly finessed. I didn't find myself using the guns that much though. I mean, they take so long to repack and load, plus you can't carry that many bullets, and there were no silencers in the 1700s, so it's not great for stealthy work.
Yeah, I wanted to like the guns more, but I found that the rifle was particularly buggy, and it might just be because we're not on the final code of this game, so we have to wait and see on that one.
As Connor gets deeper into the Revolution, you'll start to take part in some larger scale fights, and these were all integrated really well, I thought. You know, in previous games they had those kind of weird RTS sections, and they all just felt a bit tacked on.
Prepare yourself. Fire!
Here, you'll seamlessly slip from your regular missions to commanding squads of soldiers on a battlefield, dodging cannon fire, or finding yourself caught on the high seas juggling speed and ammunition fighting ship to ship.
There is still all of your standard Assassin's Creed fare, treasure, viewpoints and free falls, side missions and collectibles, and this will keep fans of the series happy because it keeps things familiar.
I want to know how this story unfolds.
Yeah, they've kept just enough of that original formula in there to make it feel like the next chapter of the series, but where this game really shines, I think, is in all the ways that it's managed to set itself apart. Like Ezio, Connor is a character we very quickly align ourselves with, and he makes for the perfect brooding hero.
Then what would you propose we do? Sit and watch while the Templars take control? We are sworn to stop them, or have you forgotten?
But what I find so impressive time and time again with these games is that the story and setting just don't feel so sophisticated to me. I mean, taking a fictional idea and putting it in this historical setting and then carrying it out so artfully just makes me so excited about video games as a medium. And I'm thrilled to see how far character performances have come as well. The motion capture and character acting in this game is a real standout. Subtle nuances in the eyes and face from the actors' performances come through now, and it's just gripping to watch.
I know that the people wish to be free, and that men like Washington fight to make it so.
Please, the man is weak. He stumbles and stammers through each engagement, making it all up as he goes along. Pedigree is pathetic, his military record even more so.
Multiplayer is back with new maps and modes. Sadly, we couldn't test it out with our code, but I don't know, Hex, I've always found the multiplayer to be a bit take it or leave it with Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed multiplayer myself, but I know some people love it. But we should wrap this up, Barjo. Final thoughts?
Yes, well, you know, I was very worried about this game because they just kept pumping those Assassin's Creeds out. But this one has been bubbling away in the background through all of that, and what they've managed to put forward is something fresh and new while still staying true to the series' roots. It's not perfect. There are some frustrating filler missions and some clipping issues with the animations, which might just be our review code, but I think this is a satisfying sequel, and I think fans will be more than happy. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It takes you on such a journey. They picked a really exciting setting to throw the player into, and you really do feel like a part of it. The only thing I missed were those awesome jumping puzzle caverns. I was sad to see those go, but still there is so much new here, and yet so much that feels familiar. It's the perfect evolutionary step. It has its issues. Every Assassin's Creed game has had a few, but even so, with this installment, it remains one of the best franchises I've ever played. So I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens. Now, Barjo, did you know the Bond film franchise turns 50 this year?
I did know that, Hex, because we have quite a few rabid Bond fans in the office. The films have always been successful, but the games have always been a bit hit or miss.
As 00 Agent Goose investigates.
The Bond franchise seems ready-made for video games. It's got plenty of stunts, guns, and stunning locations, and of course a brilliant main character. But the history of Bond games is not as rosy as we would expect.
Here's your brief, Goose. We need you to follow our lead and investigate the source of the threat.
A group of international terrorists targeting the ABC with an EMP. How original. The first game was made back in 1983 by the Parker brothers.
It was a side-scrolling shooter platformer based on 4 previous Bond films. In 1985, publisher Domark kickstarted their long relationship with the franchise with A View to a Kill. A year later, the first movie tie-in game emerged with The Living Daylights. Made by Aussie developers Melbourne House, it was a platform shooter which roughly followed the plot of the film, but suffered from some severe gameplay and difficulty issues.
Do proceed with the utmost caution, Goose. It'll be a national disaster if the Australian public are deprived of good game forever.
Duly noted, Em. More monk, less hitman.
Exactly.
The next movie tie-in game was License to Kill, released in 1989, and it received more critical praise than its predecessor.
Report to the lab. Dee will be waiting.
Yes, Mum.
And Goose, do try to come back alive.
For the next 6 years after License to Kill, production on the Bond films was halted due to legal battles fought by its production company Eon. But this didn't stop game producers. Domark continued with its range of Bond top-down shooters with the adaptation of The Spy Who Loved Me in 1990. Followed by James Bond 007 The Duel in 1993, which became the first game not to be based on an existing Bond film or book.
He seems a little hot-headed.
Ah, good morning, Goose.
Good morning, Dee. What have you got for me today? Then there was a long wait for the next Bond game, but when it arrived, it was a game changer.
There's not much to be said of GoldenEye N64, which hasn't already been said. But for a game which took its initial inspiration from Virtua Cop, it was to be a landmark in console first-person shooters. And it's still the game that everyone thinks of when you mention James Bond and video games in the same sentence.
Don't touch that! The icing's plutonium!
The game built the groundwork for many features we now take for granted in modern first-person shooters, and it provided an equally strong single and multiplayer experience.
The fact that the producers of GoldenEye actually invited Rare to the film sets meant that the game was one of the first few movie adaptations to really capture the feel of the film's locations.
Now pay attention, Goose. This vintage Game Boy is equipped with twin lasers. Simply press A and B together to arm and up on the control pad to fire. And down twice to disarm, or else it's...
Game over?
Oh, grow up, Goose. And bring it back in one piece this time.
Unfortunately, the brilliance that was GoldenEye didn't continue when EA took helm of the franchise. Both Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough shot wide of their targets. If you look for perfection...
You'll never be content. Are you my contact, mister?
The name's Goose. Just Goose. And you are?
Natalia. Natalia Hexatop.
Once EA started to make standalone Bond games, they really found their groove.
Both Agent Under Fire and its sequel, Nightfire, received positive reviews. They returned Bond to the first-person shooter, with original storylines, title songs, villains, and Bond girls.
Waiter, I'll have a martini, shaken, not stirred. And the lady will have a carte blanche.
You know my favorite drink, Mr. Goose.
Good evening, Mr. Goose.
Now's the time, my dear. Bring him to me.
Everything or Nothing took the standalone Bond game concept to new heights in 2004.
It felt like a true Bond adventure in game form and received deserved critical acclaim. The script was written by Bruce Fierstein, who also helped pen 3 actual Bond films.
Sorry, gentlemen, but I have a train to catch.
Even though EA had its relative successes, it also had its fair share of duds.
007 Racing was a shallow cash-in on the franchise, and GoldenEye Rogue Agent tried to align itself with the GoldenEye brand, but was nothing more than a retconned Bond mashup with old villains and a deficient storyline.
You can't run, Hexatop. I know who you work for.
No! You don't know what he's capable of. You don't know fear.
In 2005, EA went in a different direction, producing an adaptation of From Russia with Love. It was the first time a Bond game had revisited the old film canon since the late 80s, and it took us back to the retro days of Sean Connery's Bond, although he did sound a tad tired.
A dry martini. Shaken, not stout.
Goose?
Natalia, just tell me where he is. We can keep you safe.
All right. He's in the control room preparing the satellites. Hurry. Goose, you can't let him win.
Ah, Mr. Goose. We finally meet face to face. I'm Ernst Stavro Badgefeld. Guards, kill him.
In 2006, Activision bought the rights to the James Bond license, kicking off their campaign with Quantum of Solace.
The game updated Bond with a cover system and grappling moves.
Although a decent game, Quantum of Solace didn't exactly set the gaming world on fire.
But Activision would improve on their gameplay in the next installment, Bloodstone. Scripted again by Bruce Fierstein, it was another solid standalone, incorporating a catchy Bond theme from Joss Stone and takedown mechanics from the likes of games like Splinter Cell.
See you in the lobby. It's over, Bargefeld. Give up.
Your pithy secret agent status is no match for my wits. I've already armed the satellites.
In 2010, Nintendo released an updated version of the original GoldenEye for the Wii. Although the graphics felt refreshed, it failed to capture the magic of the original. Changing Bond to Daniel Craig, losing the likeness of Sean Bean as Alec Trevelyan, and major plot changes meant that the game was less of an update and more of a reimagining.
For England? For England, Alec. Always for England.
In 90 seconds, Mr. Goose, the whole world will know how you failed to protect them.
Although James Bond has given inspiration to many video game characters and settings that we're familiar with today, it hasn't had much success in the form of games.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Goose. I expect you to die.
But with the film actors becoming more willing to partake in the games, perhaps it won't be long until we get the next fully fledged Bond game. After all, he is the world's greatest secret agent. Shocking. Positively shocking.
Goose, you're alive. But what happened to Mr. Batchfeld?
Well, darling, I think he blew a fuse.
The Master Chief is dead.
This file reads missing in action. I need you. Do not underestimate him.
The Halo franchise has played a huge role in shaping the console FPS scene today, but I think it's fair to say, as groundbreaking as Halo once was, in recent years it has lost the crown to other shooters. But the King hath returned, and being back in the actual Master Chief helm after 5 long years is a big deal.
Don't suppose you're any good at clearing LZs?
On occasion.
They've fleshed out his character and his relationship with Cortana beautifully this time too. I never expected to say this about a guy in a helmet and a computer program, but their performances have real humanity and depth to them.
Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
Honestly, I'm not a huge Cortana fan, but I'm starting to warm to her now. She has some fantastic scenes here. They've also managed to cut through a lot of that confusing and dense storytelling that has plagued Halo games. Long-time questions are answered, and they've created some epic sci-fi moments. But at the core, it's just great to be the Chief again, shooting shit up.
This game follows on from Halo 3 with the Chief being awoken from cryosleep. You'll get a few seconds to drink in the gorgeous new graphics before you're fighting off some familiar Covenant boarding parties. There's so many new toys to play with, like the heavy machine gun and the railgun. It's pretty much all the best guns from Halo's past. Plus, with a whole new alien race called the Prometheans comes a ton of schmick new hardware.
I loved how their guns seem to build themselves around your hand like a mini transformer.
My favorite new weapon has to be the one you wear, the Mantis Mech.
Well, the Chief is already a mechanized war machine, so it's kind of like his version of the Mario Mushroom power-up. He gets bigger and angrier. You do not want to be around when he stamps his foot. And it's easy to forget, but when it comes to console FPS, just no one does it better than Halo. There's that right balance of auto-aim, and the hitboxes are all the right size, and every bullet just goes exactly where you intended to. I always feel a bit rubbish when I'm on console FPS because I play with the mouse and keyboard so much, but with Halo, it just doesn't matter.
I think one of 343's biggest achievements is it just looks and feels like a Halo game. Everything's familiar. Those calculated headshots, the brutal melee, a well-timed grenade. But best of all is they've managed to add a huge amount to the sandbox without ruining it. Learning how to take down those Prometheans just felt like the first time I've played Halo and was confronted by the dastardly smart elites.
Well, he's just a ray of sunshine, isn't he?
These guys are tough and require some smart new strategies to beat.
Also, I feel like all the enemy combinations and placements are all on purpose. They're all there to give you a unique and structured challenge. Sprinting is also no longer an armor ability, you can just do it at any time, and I think that's been long overdue. And it is satisfying sprinting up to an elite for a well-timed face punch. There's also a new energy shield armor ability. This is handy for pushing up into enemy positions and getting amongst them with a shotty, or just to get out of trouble.
Surprisingly, it's Halo 4's settings that had the biggest impact on me. Visually, this is easily one of the most stunning 360 games yet. Textures are detailed, it loads quickly and it flows well, and the lighting effects make each scene pop. More than the technical achievement though, it's the design of the locations that really stands out. Human spaceships have this gritty, lived-in feel with nods to classic sci-fi films. And then contrasting against this, you have majestic alien Forerunner structures. But it's the little details that bring it home. I was slow panning around this alien world when I noticed that some of the taller structures were actually casting shadows on the clouds.
I remember that bit, but I wasn't slow panning. I was looking at this big open environment going, why am I walking when I could be in a vehicle? And then I see the game's first warthog.
Warthogs, and still in one piece. Nice to see your luck is holding out.
And this is just one of many examples about how this new studio just gets Halo. They know we love belting across big open environments and vehicles.
Well, someone's overcompensating.
Blowing this up, blowing that up, seeing something over there and blowing that up too.
And it wouldn't be Halo if letting your AI teammates drive was anything but a complete disaster. Come on, it's like they're auditioning for world's stupidest drivers.
Yes, but it's always fun taking revenge. Most importantly, Halo 4 nails its pacing. So many shooters are just action, 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 but here you really get the time to stop and smell the sci-fi. And I especially like the drip feed and placement of weapons, because there'll be many situations where you feel like you could really use a shotgun, for example, and their one will be just off to the side, but it's in a subtle way, it's not jammed down your throat.
The game's story and the curveballs that it threw out are what really gripped me, and we've said very little about the story so far.
You could say we've been Spartan in our approach.
You could. What we can say is that this game isn't afraid to blindside you with big surprises. I mean, die-hard Halo fans will just lose their collective minds over some of the epic moments here.
Oh my god! Oh, it all makes sense now! If you're a huge Halo fan, you will jump out of your chair more than once. If you're not, you will have a clear idea of what you need to do in the game, but some of the bigger ideas, I felt they could have been reinforced and explained a little bit better.
I don't know, I think sci-fi is meant to be a little bit mysterious, and the less is more approach to acting in the cutscenes is really well done, I think. There's minimal dialogue in the game, but the performances are some of the best we've seen in a first-person shooter.
I was put into service 8 years ago.
8 years?
AIs deteriorate after 7, Chief.
It certainly does feel like the start of a new trilogy as well. There are lots of ideas being planted here, I think, that have room to grow. But we won't talk about the story anymore for fear of spoils, but we can talk about the multiplayer.
Things have been changed up quite a bit this time. You'll now earn Spartan points as you rank up, which can be spent on unlocking guns and armor abilities. There are a lot more options for tweaking your starting weapons than we had in Reach, so you can spend more time playing how you'd like to play.
I just love unlocking stuff and customizing it, and that'll keep me playing past the first few weeks.
There are loads of other little tweaks too, such as how Slayer is more about scoring points rather than kills. Overall, it feels distinct from previous Halos, but it hasn't lost that Halo magic. It's just a bit faster paced and more engrossing than ever before.
Plus, I like the new Call of Duty kill cam. Thanks to that, I'll never have to endure the teabagging aftermath. We also jumped into a bunch of local split-screen matches, and it reminded me just how good it is split-screen on a couch playing an FPS with a friend.
Oh, no! No!
And I will avenge you, Hex, and then teabag you with my spaceship.
Oh god! I'm out of here.
Worth it. And I wish every multiplayer game had Halo's theatre mode.
It's also good to see Halo's Valhalla making a comeback as Ragnarok. I mean, Halo's always been at its best with vehicle combat in the mix. And the Firefight Wave mode has been replaced with the much more interesting Spartan Ops. It's essentially a whole new Halo campaign taking place 6 months after the main campaign wraps up and follows the story of a new group of Spartans.
I thought you'd be taller.
But we should wrap this up. Hex, final thoughts?
You know, I think a lot of us felt that there were just too many sequels and too many shooters coming out of this year's E3, and all the real innovation was coming from the smaller digital titles. But, you know, with this and Assassin's Creed 3, it's just proof that surprises are still possible within the big sequel system. This truly is a gripping sci-fi experience. I'm giving it 10 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I think 343 Industries have done the impossible here. They've made a sequel that is actually better than all of Bungie's sequels, and that's an amazing achievement when you think about it. I've always liked Halo a lot, but now I'm finally starting to love it, so I'm giving this 10 out of 10 rubber chickens as well. Double tens, Hex. Grab the chief.
Let's go.
Be free! Fly, Master Chief, fly! So, did you guess the game for this week?
Wolfenstein 3D. Won't lie to you, that guess the game was a bit of a rush job.
Yeah, this week has been full on. Next week, not quite so busy, but still plenty to talk about with Need for Speed Most Wanted.
Plus, Goose has been channeling the violence and synth music from the 80s with Hotline Miami. We also have developer interviews from all of the games we reviewed on tonight's show on our website if you want to check them out. Until next week, gamers, Barjo out.
Hex out.
I'm sleepy.
That was exhausting.
I'm sleepy, my eyes hurt.